When the book fell off the shelf, I didn't expect it to destroy my marriage. It hit the hardwood floor with a heavy thud, the kind that makes your stomach twist for no reason. The cover flapped open, and something white slipped out, an envelope, tucked deep between the pages. I picked it up, thinking it was a receipt or a library notice. But when I opened it, I froze. Inside were 3 folded letters, written in a hand I didn't recognize, filled with words no husband should ever have to read. I love you. I miss the way you smile when you pretend he doesn't exist. You're mine. The worst part? The date on the top corner. Last week. That's when I felt the floor vanish beneath me. My wife, Anna, had borrowed that book from the city library just days ago. I thought she'd been reading it at night in bed. I thought she'd been escaping into fiction. Turns out, the fiction was my life. Before I dive deeper into this story, take a second to subscribe if you love real-life stories that twist and turn like this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. I stared at those letters for what felt like an hour, my hands shaking. My brain was fighting itself. Half of me screaming that it couldn't be true, the other half whispering that it always had been. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate, like someone who took pride in their words. Every line oozed confidence. Every sentence reeked of something I couldn't give her anymore: passion, secrecy, excitement. I kept repeating one phrase in my head. Who the hell is M? Because that's how the letters were signed. Just a single letter. M. I put everything back inside the envelope and shoved it deep into the back of the book. My instinct told me to confront her immediately. But something in those letters, some cruel detail about how easily he believes you, stopped me cold. I didn't want to prove them right. Not yet. That night, Anna came home from work like nothing had happened. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, asked what I wanted for dinner. I watched her move around the kitchen, humming softly while chopping vegetables, completely unaware that my heart was cracking in real time. I asked her, casually, about the library book. She said she'd return it tomorrow. I nodded, pretending to be fine, pretending to be me. After dinner, I told her I was going to take out the trash, but instead I went to the garage. I pulled the book out of the bag where I'd hidden it. I turned it over in my hands, looking at the worn cover, the faded library stamp. What kind of person uses public books to hide something so private? So calculated? That's when my anger started to transform into something sharper: curiosity. Who was M? How long had this been going on? And why hide the letters in library books of all places? It wasn't just cheating, it was a game. A sick, clever game that required patience and planning. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. Anna said she needed to drop by the library a few times that week, which wasn't unusual. She loved reading. Or at least, that's what I thought. But now, every time she mentioned it, my pulse quickened. I imagined her sneaking between the aisles, sliding another letter into a random book, or picking one up from her secret admirer. That I started to notice the small things. How she'd dress a little nicer on library days. How she'd take longer to get ready. How she'd smile at her phone before slipping it away. None of it screamed guilt. But once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. One night, she left her phone charging in the living room while she showered. I picked it up. Not to snoop, I told myself. Just to check. But the phone was locked, and the wallpaper, our wedding photo, felt like mockery. I put it back down. I wasn't ready to cross that line. Not yet. I needed proof that couldn't be denied. The next morning, while she was at work, I went to the library. I told myself it was just to return the book, but I ended up wandering to the same shelf it came from. Romance section, middle row, third shelf down. My eyes scanned the spines until I found another book by the same author. I pulled it out, and my heart skipped a beat. There, barely sticking out between the pages, was another envelope. I looked around. No one. Just an old man reading the paper by the window. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. 2 words, written in the same handwriting: miss you. That's when I realized it wasn't random. It was ritual. She'd been hiding love letters in library books, trading secret messages with someone, using the city's shelves as their playground. And I had no idea how deep it went. But one thing was clear: this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next time Anna said she had to return a few books, I followed her. Not in a movie style, trench coat kind of way. I just left the house 10 minutes after she did. Took my car and parked a block away from the city library. From where I sat, I could see the front steps through my windshield. She walked up, wearing a long beige coat and those same boots she'd worn on our anniversary. I remember that because back then I thought she wore them for me. Now, I wasn't so sure. She walked inside with a calmness that didn't fit the guilt I was expecting. No hesitation, no glancing around. Just routine. That's what made it worse. She wasn't sneaking around like someone afraid of being caught. She was comfortable. This was something she'd done before. I waited 5 minutes, then got out and followed her in. The library smelled like old paper and quiet secrets. I moved between the aisles slowly, pretending to browse. Then I saw her, standing in the same section as before, her fingers sliding across the spines of romance novels, like she was looking for something familiar. She took one out, opened it briefly, then slipped a folded note inside before placing it back. My chest tightened. There it was. Proof that if you've ever had your entire world shift in silence, you'll know that sound. The pounding of your own pulse echoing in your ears. That was me, watching my wife hide someone else's words, like a thief of emotions. Before I continue, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss how this twisted story unfolds. What I discovered next turned suspicion into something far darker. I ducked behind another shelf and waited until she left. Then, when the coast was clear, I walked up to the same book. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was the note she had just slipped in, a small piece of cream paper with handwriting I knew too well. It wasn't M's handwriting. It was hers. That discovery hit harder than I expected. My stomach flipped. So, was she writing to herself? Or had she just been the messenger, the middleman passing messages between shelves? The thought didn't make sense. But the ink was still fresh, and her handwriting was unmistakable. That night at dinner, she acted like nothing happened. She laughed, talked about work, and mentioned how she loved the new author she'd found. I nodded, pretending to listen. But my mind was already constructing timelines, figuring out when she could have written those letters. How long she'd been playing this game. Over the next week, I went to the library 3 times. Each time, I found something new. A note saying he doesn't suspect, another with the bridge at dusk, and once, a small photograph, my wife, standing next to a man whose face was blurred by motion. It wasn't just a note this time. It was evidence that I started keeping everything I found. I hid the letters in a shoebox in the trunk of my car. I didn't want her anywhere near them. Every piece of paper, every photo, every subtle clue, they all felt like part of a bigger puzzle. A cruel, calculated 1:1 afternoon, I saw her car parked near the library again. But she wasn't inside. She was across the street, sitting at a cafe, alone, sipping coffee, staring at her phone. I stayed in my car, watching. She looked calm, peaceful even. Then she smiled, that private, gentle smile I hadn't seen in months, and typed something on her screen. A moment later, she stood up, crossed the street, went into the library for less than 2 minutes, and came back out empty-handed. That's when I realized this wasn't just about letters. There was communication happening elsewhere. Maybe texts, maybe calls from a hidden number. Whatever it was, it went deeper than paper and ink. I wanted to confront her right there, but something stopped me. I wanted her truth, not her reaction. I wanted the why, not another lie. That night, I pretended to sleep. I heard her phone buzz on the nightstand. She got up quietly, tiptoed into the living room. I followed a minute later, barefoot, standing in the dark doorway. She sat on the couch, screen glowing against her face, her fingers typing fast. I couldn't see the words, but I caught the reflection in the window, a message that started with a single letter, M. My throat went dry. I stepped back before she noticed me. She deleted the conversation, placed the phone face down, and went back to bed like nothing happened. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, realizing the woman I thought I knew was building an entire second life right under my nose. But I wasn't ready to blow up yet. Not until I knew who M really was. And when I finally found out, I wished I hadn't. For days, the letter M wouldn't leave my head. It haunted every quiet moment, the car rides, the grocery store, even the sound of her brushing her teeth beside me. I started seeing it everywhere, in street signs, in brand names, in headlines. That single letter had become the ghost of my peace. The most obvious M in our lives was my coworker, Mark. We'd worked together for 5 years, and he'd been to our house more than once for cookouts and football nights. He was charming, always friendly with Anna, maybe too friendly. I used to laugh it off. But now, every memory with him replayed in my mind with a darker tone. The way his eyes lingered when she laughed. The way she poured him a second drink without him asking. The inside jokes they shared right in front of me that I didn't want to believe it, but everything fit too perfectly. So I decided to test the theory. The next morning at work, I casually mentioned the library. I said Anna had been reading again, and that she was obsessed with some romance author. Mark froze for half a second. It was subtle, but I saw it. He looked down at his coffee, then back up with that usual grin. Yeah? She's got good taste, he said. But his voice cracked on the word good. That was all it took. I didn't show it, but inside I was burning. Later that day, I checked the parking lot security cameras. I knew the guy who handled the footage. We sometimes used it to track deliveries. I asked if he could pull clips from the past week, just in case my car had been hit. He didn't ask questions. That night, in my office, I scrolled through the footage frame by frame. And there it was, Mark's car, parked outside the library. The same day Anna was there. The timestamp? Just 10 minutes apart. I leaned back in my chair, trying to swallow the anger boiling in my chest. It was one thing to suspect. It was another to see it. Before I continue, make sure you subscribe, because what happened next wasn't just betrayal. It was something much colder. Something planned. That night, when Anna came home, I tried to act normal. We had dinner. She told me about her day, about the new girl at work who kept messing up the printer. I smiled, nodded, pretended to listen. But all I could think about was Mark's grin, the way he said she's got good taste. After dinner, she said she was going to take a walk. Clear my head, she said. I waited 5 minutes and followed her out, keeping a good distance. It wasn't hard. She was on her phone the whole time, walking fast. She stopped at the corner near the bridge, the same one mentioned in one of those notes. I hid behind a tree and waited till a car pulled up. Black sedan. She didn't get in. She just leaned toward the window, said something, and passed a small envelope through. The window rolled up, and the car drove away. My heart pounded so hard I thought she'd hear it that I didn't chase her. I couldn't. My body felt heavy, frozen between rage and disbelief. I waited until she turned around and walked back home before I stepped into the street. My hands were shaking when I called the only person I trusted, my sister, Claire. She answered half asleep. You sound like you've seen a ghost, she said. Not a ghost, I whispered. Something worse. I told her everything. The letters, the notes, the car, the possibility that Mark was involved. She didn't interrupt, just breathed quietly on the other end. When I finished, she said, You need to stop guessing. You need proof you can't deny. She was right. The next day, I left work early. I told my boss I was sick, though the only thing sick was my mind. I parked near the bridge, same spot as before, and waited. 2 hours later, I saw the same black sedan. It parked. This time I was ready. I took out my phone and zoomed in on the driver's face through the windshield, but my blood went cold. It wasn't Mark. It was someone else, someone older. Someone I recognized. IT was our neighbor, Mr. Miller. He lived across the street. Retired, quiet, the kind of man who waved every morning and mowed his lawn twice a week. He was harmless. Or at least, that's what I'd always thought. I watched in disbelief as he stepped out of the car, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the library with that same careful calm Anna had. Now, nothing made sense anymore. Why him? What connection could there possibly be between them? That night, when Anna came home, she smiled the same as always. You okay? She asked. You look pale. I'm fine, I lied, but inside I wasn't fine. Inside, I was unraveling, because now I had two names. Two M. S. And both of them were hiding something that I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. Mr. Miller, the quiet man across the street, passing envelopes in the dark like he was part of some hidden exchange. The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. Why would my wife, a 32-year-old woman, be meeting a man in his 60s by a bridge at night? What could they possibly be sharing that had to be so secret? The next morning, I sat in my car watching his house. The blinds were always half closed, his porch spotless, his driveway empty except for the same black sedan. He lived alone since his wife passed away years ago. Everyone on our street saw him as the kind neighbor who offered to help shovel snow and collect mail when you were out of town. But now, I couldn't unsee the truth. The same man was somehow connected to those letters. I waited until he left for what looked like his morning walk, then crossed the street. I knocked once, no answer. Then I noticed something strange. His mail slot was stuffed full, like he hadn't checked it in days. Curiosity overrode caution. I opened it slightly, enough to peek inside. Dozens of envelopes, and several of them looked identical to the ones I'd found in the library. Same cream color, same size. My pulse quickened. Before I continue, subscribe if you haven't already, because what I found inside that house changed everything. Later that week, I waited again. When he went for his usual evening walk, I crossed the street and slipped around the side of his house. I wasn't there to break in or anything, just to look through the window. The blinds were tilted open just enough for me to see a small desk near the corner, covered with papers and a typewriter. A typewriter. Who even used those anymore? Next to it, a neat stack of books, all from the city library. My stomach twisted. It couldn't be coincidence. Suddenly, the front door creaked open behind me. I jumped back, heart slamming into my ribs. Mr. Miller stood there, holding a small bag of trash. His expression shifted the second he saw me. Surprise first, then something else. Calm. Controlled. Evening, son, he said quietly. Lose something. I forced a nervous laugh. No, just, my dog sometimes runs through your yard. He nodded, like he didn't believe me, but didn't care enough to argue. Be careful snooping around other people's homes, he said. His tone wasn't threatening, but it wasn't friendly either. I mumbled an apology and backed away. The moment I was in my car, my hands started trembling. I could still see his face in my mind. No anger, no confusion, just awareness. Like he knew why I was there. That night, I decided to look deeper. I pulled up old neighborhood newsletters online, looking for anything about him. Turns out, before retiring, he'd worked as a librarian. Not just any librarian, the branch manager of the very same city library where Anna kept returning books. My blood ran cold. That was the link. He had access. Knowledge. History. Maybe even the system itself. The next day, I drove back to the library, pretending to browse while I spoke with the younger librarian at the front desk. I casually brought up his name. She smiled. Oh, Mr. Miller? He still comes by sometimes. He volunteers to help organize the archives. Archives? That explained the books. The letters. The way he moved there like it was still his domain. When I left, I spotted him again, standing outside near the entrance, talking to Anna. My heart stopped. He wasn't just helping her hide things. They knew each other. And they weren't just neighbors. There was familiarity in how she tilted her head, how he leaned closer when she laughed that I didn't go inside. I couldn't. I just watched from my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. After a few minutes, she handed him a book. He took it, smiled, and walked away. When she got home that night, I asked casually, "Did you go to the library again today?" "Yeah," she said. "Just returned a few books. Nothing more." No mention of him. No hesitation. She lied straight to my face, smoothly, effortlessly. After she went to bed, I took the car and drove back to the library parking lot. The streetlights reflected off the rain-soaked pavement. I sat there for a while, staring at the building. Somewhere inside those walls were the answers I needed. It wasn't just about love letters anymore. It was manipulation. Layers of lies wrapped in paper and ink. And if Mr. Miller was involved, then my wife wasn't the only one playing games. The library looked different at night. The warm, quiet space that smelled like paper and calm during the day turned cold and hollow after closing. The lights inside glowed faintly through the tall windows, and the street outside was empty. I parked across the road and sat for a long time, thinking. For weeks, I'd been chasing ghosts, letters, initials, faces that didn't add up. But seeing Anna hand that book to Mr. Miller had changed everything. There was no longer a question of if something was going on. The only question left was why I knew the security guard's shift ended at 10. I waited until the streetlights blinked on and the last car left the lot. Then I stepped out into the cold. The side door, the one near the staff entrance, wasn't locked. That surprised me. I pushed it open just enough to slip inside. The air was still. Only a few hallway lights were on, humming softly. I moved slowly, my heartbeat so loud I thought it would echo off the walls. My goal wasn't to steal anything or break anything. I just needed to know the truth. I made my way to the section where I'd seen Anna hide the first note. The rows looked endless in the dim light. My phone's flashlight barely cut through the shadows. I pulled a few books off the shelf at random. Nothing. Then I remembered the pattern. The author names, the same shelf, the middle row. I crouched down and checked every spine in the row until one felt slightly off. It wasn't aligned with the others. When I opened it, an envelope slipped out. But this time, it wasn't sealed. Inside were several folded notes, all in Anna's handwriting. They weren't letters to anyone. They were drafts. Practice runs. Words scratched out, rewritten again. He'll believe it. Make it look accidental. Don't forget, bridge equals control. My hands went numb. She wasn't just receiving letters. She was creating them, planning them. Every message, every setup, every coincidence, all designed. But for what? Then I saw a second page underneath the notes. A list. My name at the top. Under it, dates, times, even details about conversations we'd had. Notes about how I reacted to things, what made me jealous, what made me angry. At the bottom, written in her neat handwriting, were two words, proof of instability. I sat there on the floor, shaking. It all started to click. The letters weren't love notes. They were bait. She was trying to make me paranoid. To make me snap, I shoved everything back into the envelope, heart racing. That's when I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate ones that I turned off my light and froze. The sound grew closer, then stopped. From around the corner, a soft voice said, "You shouldn't be here." It was Mr. Millard. He stepped into view, wearing a dark coat, holding a flashlight. His face was calm, but there was something sharp behind his eyes. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "What is all this?" He sighed. "You shouldn't read things that don't belong to you. She's using you," I said, my voice low. "Or are you part of it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached out his hand, palm up. "Give me the envelope, son. You don't know what you're holding." I took a step back. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm holding," I said. "It's the truth." For the first time, his expression changed. His calm slipped, just for a moment. "You really think this is about you?" He said quietly. "She's not doing this to you. She's doing it because of you." The words hit like ice water. But before I could say anything, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the dark stacks that I stood there, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what he'd said. Because of me? What did that even mean? When I finally stepped outside, the night air hit me like a slap. I looked down at the envelope in my hand, the letters, the notes, the evidence, and realized I was holding the key to something much bigger than I'd imagined. This wasn't a love affair. It was a setup, and if I didn't act fast, the story she was writing would end with me as the villain that I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I sat in my car outside the dark library until sunrise, staring at the folder on the passenger seat. The city woke up around me. Buses hissed, kids laughed, the sky turned gold, and I just sat there, trying to breathe through the realization that my wife had been turning my life into a story. A story where I was the unstable husband. The evidence in my hand wasn't a misunderstanding or a midlife secret. It was a plan, one that had been unfolding for months. Every letter, every mistake, every suspicious coincidence had been written by her, rehearsed like lines in a play. And that phrase from Mr. Miller, "She's doing it because of you," echoed in my head like a warning I didn't yet understand. When I finally drove home, the house was quiet. Anna was still asleep, sunlight spilling over her face. She looked peaceful, innocent. I stood there watching her, and for a moment, I almost believed none of it was real. But then I saw her phone on the nightstand, same lock screen, same photo of us smiling. And that illusion burned away. I opened my laptop and scanned the letters again, one by one. She'd been documenting my moods, my habits, even my tone when we argued. She'd been gathering evidence, not of her guilt, but of my supposed volatility. Every word she wrote painted me as the jealous, controlling husband. The kind of man who'd drive a woman to leave, or worse, that I realized what she wanted, a clean escape. Sympathy. A reason to ruin me publicly while playing the victim. That evening, when she came home, she kissed me like always and asked about my day. I smiled. "Just the usual," I said. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. Inside, I was ice. Over the next few days, I played along. I was calm, kind, predictable. The perfect husband. I made dinner, fixed the squeaky door, brought her coffee in bed. And while she relaxed into that comfort, I worked. I scanned every letter, photographed every note, every date. Then, quietly, I recorded a few of our conversations, especially the ones where she'd subtly provoke me, trying to make me react. But I didn't react anymore. I gave her nothing. One night, I forgot my phone on record and left it in the living room. From the hallway, I heard her speaking on the phone. Soft voice, careful tone. He's calmer now, she said. But I think he's starting to crack inside. That'll make it easier to show the pattern. She paused, listening. Then, yes. I'll leave the next one in the book tomorrow. He'll find it. He always does. My stomach turned. She wasn't even hiding it anymore. The next morning, she left for work early, saying she needed to stop by the library first. I followed half an hour later, parked a block away, and waited. When she left, I went inside. The same shelf, the same author. And there it was, a new envelope. Inside was a letter written to someone named M. But this time, the message wasn't romantic. It was rehearsed dialogue, lines meant to be overheard, like she was preparing for a staged confrontation. You can't keep doing this, the letter read. He's scaring me. I don't feel safe anymore. She was building a story, not for me, but for anyone else who might find it. A neighbor, a police officer, maybe even a judge. That's when I understood Mr. Miller's role. He wasn't a secret lover. He was helping her create credibility, the concerned elder, the one who'd back up her story when the time came. Maybe he didn't even know the full plan, but he was a part of it. That I pocketed the letter, returned home, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at it. My revenge wasn't going to be loud or violent. It would be clean, controlled, the same way she planned to destroy me. That night, when she came home, I told her I'd been thinking about us, that maybe I had been too distant lately. Her eyes softened instantly. It's okay, she said. We've just been stressed. She leaned in, kissed me, told me she loved me, and I smiled back. Because I already knew how her story would end, rewritten in my favor. Using her own words as proof, the night I found that last letter, something inside me shifted. The fear was gone. The heartbreak too. What replaced it was quiet focus, the kind of calm that comes only when you stop playing defense. Anna had built a story meant to break me, but she'd made one mistake. She wrote everything down. And in those pages, her perfect plan was about to collapse. The next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. I made breakfast, kissed her cheek, and asked about her plans for the day. She smiled, that soft, practiced smile, the one that used to make me melt. Just running errands, she said. Library, then groceries. Of course, always the library. When she left, I called my sister Claire again. She was the only one who knew everything. Are you sure you want to go through with this? She asked. I don't have a choice, I said. She's building a case against me. I just need to make sure the evidence leads the other way. I started by visiting a lawyer, not to sue, not yet, just to understand what kind of evidence mattered in cases involving emotional manipulation and false allegations. He explained that written documentation and recordings could make or break a defense. I smiled to myself. I already had both. That night, I placed a small camera on the bookshelf in our living room. Not hidden in some creepy way, just cleverly placed behind a row of books where no one would notice. I didn't need to trap her doing anything illegal. I just needed her to be herself. The next day, I pretended to be upset. Subtly, enough to make her think her plan was working. I sighed, avoided eye contact, stayed quiet at dinner. She noticed immediately. Is something wrong? She asked, feigning concern. Just tired, I said. That night, while I lay in bed pretending to sleep, I heard her phone buzz again. She tiptoed into the kitchen, whispering. The camera caught everything. Her words, the tone, the smirk. It's working, she said softly. He's slipping. By next week, I'll have everything I need. I didn't even need to hear the rest. That short clip was more than enough. Over the next few days, I gathered every piece of her plan. The letters, the drafts, the recordings, the footage. I organized everything by date, labeled every file, and saved backups on a private drive. My sister helped me compile it all into a neat, chronological timeline that showed exactly what Anna had been doing. Then came the part that made my hands shake. I sent an anonymous email from a new account, no names, no identifiers, to her workplace's HR department. I attached only a few screenshots and letters, enough to raise questions, but not enough to expose my involvement. A few days later, I watched her face over dinner as she read a message on her phone. She went pale. Her hand trembled slightly before she forced a smile and put the phone down. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, she said. Just work stuff. She didn't eat much that night. Meanwhile, I quietly met with a detective, not to accuse her, but to document my side. I told him I suspected my wife was fabricating evidence to frame me. I provided the notes, photos, and digital copies of the recordings. He didn't say much, just nodded and took everything. But the way he looked at me before I left told me I wasn't crazy anymore. For the next week, I played my role perfectly. Loving husband. Quiet. Composed. She started getting nervous, fidgety. I could feel the cracks forming. She'd expected me to explode, to scream, break things, make her look like the victim she was pretending to be. Instead, I gave her calmness, patience, and a silence that made her unravel. One night, she finally snapped. "Why are you acting so strange?" she demanded. "You think I'm hiding something?" I looked her in the eye and smiled. "I don't think, Anna. I know." She froze. The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see soon enough," I said softly. "The truth has a way of coming out, especially when it's written down." She laughed, a nervous, high-pitched sound that didn't reach her eyes. "You're imagining things again." I shrugged. "Maybe I am." She went to bed, slamming the door. I sat in the living room, staring at the hidden camera's light blinking faintly. The next morning, she didn't say goodbye when she left for work. Her car sped out of the driveway faster than usual. I watched her go, sipping my coffee, knowing the next move was hers. But the board was finally mine. The shift was subtle at first. A change in her tone. The way she checked her phone more often, but typed less. The way she smiled at me like she was trying to remember how. It was the look of someone realizing the ground beneath them was no longer solid. Anna's plan had been perfect, at least on paper. She'd built her version of me like a character in a novel. Jealous, obsessive, dangerous. And if I'd acted the way she expected, maybe she would have won. But now her story was falling apart, and she could feel it. It started on a Thursday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee when her phone rang. The name on the screen flashed. HR office. She froze mid-step, then quickly silenced it. I pretended not to notice. "You're not working today?" I asked. She hesitated. "Just taking a personal day." Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. I watched her grip the counter like she was trying to keep from trembling. Later that afternoon, while she was in the shower, I saw an email notification pop up on her laptop. Subject line, "Follow-up on incident report." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The timing said enough. She came out wrapped in a towel, eyes darting to the laptop like a reflex. "You're home early," she said, forcing a smile. "Yeah," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "Just didn't feel like working today." She nodded slowly, then shut the laptop and carried it upstairs. Her movements were sharp, rehearsed, the way people move when they're trying not to panic. Over the next few days, I watched her unravel. She spent hours pacing in the backyard, whispering on the phone, scribbling in that little black notebook she thought I didn't know about. Sometimes she'd look at me across the room, eyes filled with something between anger and fear, like she couldn't decide if she wanted to scream or cry. Then, one evening, there was a knock at the door. It was a detective, the same one I'd spoken to weeks earlier. Anna was beside me when I opened it. "Mrs. Hall?" He said politely. "We'd like to ask a few questions regarding some documents we received." Her face drained of color. "Documents?" He nodded. "It seems there have been conflicting statements about certain written materials." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at me, searching for some kind of signal, maybe to see if I was the one who'd set this in motion. I said nothing. The detective was calm, professional. He didn't accuse her of anything. He just asked if she'd be willing to come down to the station to clarify a few things. She agreed, but her voice cracked when she said it. When they left, the silence that filled the house was heavy. For the first time in months, it felt like my home again. That night, I sat in the same spot where I'd first found the letters. The bookshelf. The ghost of all those hidden messages. I remembered every word she'd written to that imaginary M, every moment she'd used to twist me into her victim. And now, it was all evidence. Not against me, but against her. 2 days later, she came home late. Her eyes were red, her voice small. She said the detective had gone through everything, the letters, the emails, the notes, and asked her to explain why most of them were written in her own handwriting. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. She sat down at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. "I don't understand," she said quietly. "You weren't supposed to find any of it." "That's the thing about stories," I replied. "Once they're written, they don't belong to the author anymore. They belong to whoever reads them." For the first time, she looked afraid of me, not because I was angry, but because I was calm. The control she once had was gone, and she knew it. The next morning, she packed a small bag and said she was staying with her sister for a few days. I didn't stop her. I just nodded and wished her well. After she left, I called my lawyer again. We filed for separation that same afternoon. I handed over the entire folder, the letters, the recordings, the proof that she'd built a false narrative to destroy my name. She tried calling that night. I didn't answer by the weekend. The detective had confirmed what I already knew. She'd fabricated everything. Her evidence was a paper maze, and I'd mapped every turn. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up in a cold sweat. The house was quiet, peaceful. My heart didn't race every time the phone buzzed, but deep down, I knew it wasn't over yet. People like Anna didn't just disappear quietly. She'd started this story, but I was going to be the one who ended it. A week passed in silence. No messages, no calls, no more letters hidden in library books. Just an empty house and the faint smell of her perfume still lingering in the bedroom. I thought that would bring peace, but instead it brought something else, anticipation. Because I knew Anna too well. She wasn't the kind of person who accepted defeat quietly. On the 8th day, I found out I was right. It started with an email from my lawyer. He forwarded me a document, a formal statement filed by Anna's attorney, claiming that I had been emotionally manipulative and unstable, that she had left the marriage out of fear. Attached were supporting materials, the same letters she'd written, the same ones I had already exposed as her own work. Except now, she had rewritten the timeline to make herself the victim again. For a moment, I actually laughed. It was desperate, reckless, but in a strange way, it was impressive. Even cornered, she was still trying to control the story. But this time, she'd underestimated the man she thought she'd broken. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I called my lawyer and asked him to let her believe she had the upper hand. Don't fight it yet, I told him. Just let her speak. 2 days later, there was a hearing scheduled for an initial settlement discussion. She walked into that courtroom wearing the same calm expression she'd worn the day she handed me her vows. Composed, poised, confident. She looked at me like she'd already won. Her lawyer presented her case first. He spoke about emotional neglect, gaslighting, patterns of control. He held up copies of her letters, red lines that made me sound like a monster. She sat beside him, eyes down, voice trembling just enough to sound believable. Then it was our turn. My lawyer stood up, nodded once at me, and opened a folder, the same folder I'd built from her own lies. He started with the recordings. Her voice, clear as day, sang, "He's calmer now. That'll make it easier to show the pattern." Her lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge raised a hand. Let him continue. Then came the letters, the drafts, the notes in her handwriting that matched every supposedly anonymous message from M. The timestamps, the metadata from her computer, every small detail she thought she'd hidden. The silence in that room was heavy, the kind that feels like it might break the air itself. She sat perfectly still, her hands gripping the edge of the table. The color drained from her face. For the first time, her performance failed her. When it was over, my lawyer handed the judge one last page. A signed statement from the library manager confirming that Anna had been the one checking out all the books in question. Every single one. The judge looked at her. "Mrs. Hall," he said evenly, "do you have any explanation for this?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She blinked rapidly, like her brain was trying to reboot a story that no longer worked. Then, finally, she whispered, "He's twisting it." The judge sighed. "Ma'am, these are your own words." And just like that, her entire plan crumbled in a single sentence. The case ended faster than I expected. There was no dramatic outburst, no tearful confession, just a quiet acknowledgement that her claims were false, that the evidence was clear, and that the marriage was over. The judge granted the divorce and dismissed her accusations entirely. Afterward, as we left the courtroom, she stopped me by the doors. Her voice was small, not angry, just defeated. "You set me up," she said. "No," I replied calmly. "You set yourself up. I just let the truth speak." She didn't say another word. She turned, walked out into the gray morning light, and didn't look back. That night, I packed up the last of her things, her books, her clothes, the framed photos we never took down. I placed them in a box and left it by the door. When I was done, I sat in the living room, surrounded by silence, and felt something I hadn't in months. Relief, no anger. No bitterness. Just peace. The story she tried to write about me had ended. But mine was just beginning. I went back to the library the next day, not to search, but to return the final book. The librarian smiled politely as I handed it over. "You're here a lot lately," she said. "Not anymore," I replied. "I think I finally found what I was looking for." And for the first time, I meant it. It's been 6 months since that day in court. 6 months since Anna walked out of my life for the last time, leaving behind nothing but the echo of the lies she built. For a while, I didn't know what to do with the silence. It felt strange, heavy but honest. No fake smiles. No hidden notes. No pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Just quiet. At first, I kept expecting her to come back, to apologize, to twist the story one more time, to try to rewrite the ending. But she never did. The only thing I got was a single text, 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. "I hope you're happy now." I didn't reply. Happiness wasn't something you win in a fight like ours. It's something you rebuild. I spent those first months cleaning out the house, getting rid of everything that reminded me of that year of manipulation. The books she used for her letters went first. I dropped them off at a donation center. Poetic, maybe, but freeing. I replaced the old curtains, repainted the bedroom, and finally opened the windows to let real air in again. Before long, I started sleeping better. The nightmares faded, replaced by something gentler, a strange sense of clarity. I began journaling, not because I wanted to dwell on the past, but because I wanted to understand it. I wanted to make sure that next time, I'd see the red flags before they turned into full-blown warning sirens. One morning, while grabbing coffee at the corner cafe, I ran into Claire. She smiled, that proud, relieved smile only a sister can give. "You look better," she said. "I feel better," I answered. And I meant it. We talked for hours. About healing, about how manipulation doesn't just break trust. It changes how you see yourself. And how the only real revenge worth taking is living well enough that they no longer matter. That became my quiet mission. I started running again. I reconnected with old friends, the ones I'd pushed away when Anna's control started tightening around my life. I even signed up for evening classes in digital forensics. Of all things, because if there's one thing I learned, it's that truth leaves a trail. And I wanted to learn how to follow it, not just for me, but for others who've been in the same place. The first time I laughed, really laughed, I was watching some old comedy on TV. It hit me how long it had been since I'd done that without faking it. I sat there alone in my living room, smiling like an idiot, realizing that peace doesn't always come with a big moment of closure. Sometimes it sneaks in quietly, like morning light through clean windows. And you know what? I don't hate her. I thought I would. But now, looking back, I just feel sorry for her. Because people who build their lives on lies never really live. They just keep rewriting chapters, hoping one day the ending will finally make sense. Mine does now. So yeah, I got my revenge, not through shouting or anger or trying to hurt her back, but by refusing to play her game, by letting her lies collapse under the weight of their own design, and by walking away with the one thing she couldn't fake: truth. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is silence. But tell me, did I do the right thing? If you were in my place, would you have handled it differently? Would you have confronted her sooner, or waited like I did? I want to know what you would have done, and if you've made it this far, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. Drop a like if this one kept you hooked, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because every story deserves to be heard, and sometimes, your words might help someone else find their way out of their own storm. The truth always finds the light. You just have to be brave enough to open the book.